Hello there, and welcome to Calm Science. I am glad you are here. Take a moment to settle in. Find a position that feels easy and supported. There is no need to hold on to any tension from the day. Just let it soften. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm, slowing down gently with each passing moment. The body can grow heavy now, and the mind can begin to drift. Tonight, we are not going to solve any problems. We are simply going to follow the path of a river. We will begin at its quiet source, high in the mountains, and travel with the water as it flows downward, carving through the land, growing wider and slower until it finally meets the vastness of the sea. You can fade in and out of the journey at any time. The story of the river is a simple one, a steady and continuous flow. So just rest and let the water carry you gently toward sleep. Fact 1. Many rivers begin not as a rushing stream, but as a quiet seepage from the ground. High in the mountains or in ancient forests, rainwater and snowmelt soak deep into the earth, gathering in underground reservoirs called aquifers. Where the land dips, this water emerges slowly, creating a spring. The water might bubble up from a crack in a rock or simply saturate the soil, forming a bog or a marsh. This initial expression of the river is humble and almost silent. It is cool, clean, and just beginning its long journey. In this way, a mighty river can start as nothing more than a gentle welling of water from the earth. Let that idea rest for a moment before we move on. Fact 2. The very first channels of a new river are called rills. These are tiny, shallow streams no wider than your hand, formed as water starts to gather and flow downhill. On a mountainside after a rain, you might see countless of these little rills tracing their way through the soil and over rocks. They are temporary and delicate, but they are the first sign of organized flow. As more water joins them, these small rills merge and combine, their collective force beginning to carve a more permanent path into the landscape. Over time, these networks of tiny trickles gather into a single, stronger stream, the infant stage of the river. Nothing urgent here, only a slow and steady pattern. Fact 3. A river's source area is known as its headwaters. This is not a single point, but a whole region of smaller streams, springs, and wetlands that all contribute to the river's initial flow. The headwaters are often found in high, remote places where the environment is pristine. The water here is typically cold and rich in oxygen, supporting unique forms of life that are adapted to these pure, fast-flowing conditions. This network of small beginnings is the river's collection zone, where it gathers its strength and identity before it begins its descent. From a distance, the headwaters look like a delicate lace of silver thread spread across the high country. You can breathe a little deeper and allow the thought to drift. Fact 4. Many of the world's great rivers are born from the seasonal melting of snow and ice. In high mountain ranges, snow accumulates all winter, forming deep snowpacks. As spring arrives and temperatures rise, this snow begins to melt, releasing vast amounts of water. This meltwater feeds the headwater streams, causing the river to swell in volume and speed. Glaciers also contribute, melting slowly throughout the summer and providing a steady source of cold water even during dry periods. This glacial meltwater often carries fine sediment, giving the river a milky turquoise appearance. As you rest, this cycle of freezing and thawing provides a reliable heartbeat for the river. Hold the shape of that thought lightly and return to ease. Fact 5. The area of land that drains into a river is called its watershed or drainage basin. Every drop of rain or snow that falls within this basin and does not evaporate will eventually find its way into the river. The boundaries of a watershed are defined by high ground, like ridges and mountains, which are called drainage divides. A large river system can have a watershed that spans entire countries or continents. It acts like a giant funnel, collecting water from a vast area and channeling it toward a single point. Up close, this immense system is made of countless small local flows, all moving in the same general direction. Let the body grow heavier as the mind stays simple. Of a new river are called rills. These are tiny, shallow streams no wider than your hand, formed as water starts to gather and flow downhill. On a mountainside after a rain, you might see countless of these little rills tracing their way through the soil and over rocks. They are temporary and delicate, but they are the first sign of organized flow. As more water joins them, these small rills merge and combine, their collective force beginning to carve a more permanent path into the landscape. Over time, these networks of tiny trickles gather into a single, stronger stream, the infant stage of the river. Nothing urgent here, only a slow and steady pattern. Fact 3. A river's source area is known as its headwaters. This is not a single point, but a whole region of smaller streams, springs, and wetlands that all contribute to the river's initial flow. The headwaters are often found in high, remote places where the environment is pristine. The water here is typically cold and rich in oxygen, supporting unique forms of life that are adapted to these pure, fast-flowing conditions. This network of small beginnings is the river's collection zone, where it gathers its strength and identity before it begins its descent. From a distance, the headwaters look like a delicate lace of silver thread spread across the high country. You can breathe a little deeper and allow the thought to drift. Fact 4. Many of the world's great rivers are born from the seasonal melting of snow and ice. In high mountain ranges, snow accumulates all winter, forming deep snowpacks. As spring arrives and temperatures rise, the snow begins to melt, releasing vast amounts of water. This meltwater feeds the headwater streams, causing the river to swell in volume and speed. Glaciers also contribute, melting slowly throughout the summer and providing a steady source of cold water even during dry periods. This glacial meltwater often carries fine sediment, giving the river a milky, turquoise appearance. As you rest, this cycle of freezing and thawing provides a reliable heartbeat for the river. Hold the shape of that thought lightly and return to ease. Fact 5. The area of land that drains into a river is called its watershed or drainage basin. Every drop of rain or snow that falls within this basin and does not evaporate will eventually find its way into the river. The boundaries of a watershed are defined by high ground, like ridges and mountains, which are called drainage divides. A large river system can have a watershed that spans entire countries or continents. It acts like a giant funnel, collecting water from a vast area and channeling it toward a single point. Up close, this immense system is made of countless small local flows, all moving in the same general direction. Let the body grow heavier as the mind stays simple. Fact 6. In the upper course of a river, where the slope is steep, the primary work of the water is erosion. The river flows with high energy, and it uses this energy to cut downward into the land. This is called vertical erosion. The river channel is often narrow and deep, enclosed within a steep V-shaped valley. The river doesn't have the energy to meander sideways, so it focuses its power on carving a deeper path. Boulders and rocks carried by the current act like tools, grinding against the riverbed and accelerating the erosion process. In these early stages, the river is a powerful sculptor of the landscape. Beneath the surface, the force of the water is steady and insistent. Let that settle like dust on a quiet floor. Fact 7. Waterfalls are a common feature of the river's youthful upper stage. They often form where the river flows over a layer of hard, resistant rock that sits on top of a softer, more easily eroded rock layer. The river erodes the softer rock underneath more quickly, creating a steep drop. The falling water carves out a deep hollow at the base called a plunge pool. Over thousands of years, the erosion at the base of the waterfall causes the hard rock cap to be undercut. This process causes the waterfall to slowly retreat upstream, leaving behind a narrow, steep-sided gorge. In this quiet corner of the journey, the river expresses its power with a constant, soothing roar. Return to the easy rhythm of your breath. Fact 8. Rapids are sections of a river where the water flows with great turbulence. This happens when the riverbed is steep and irregular, often littered with large, resistant boulders. The water has to flow over and around these obstacles, creating a chaotic mix of waves, eddies, and swirling currents. The water becomes highly aerated, appearing white and frothy. This is why rapids are often called white water. They are a sign that the river has a high gradient and is carrying a great deal of energy. In the gentle background, the sound of rapids is a constant rushing whisper, a sign of the river's youthful vigor. Let the thoughts soften at the edges and fade. Fact 9. The rocks and pebbles found in a riverbed become smooth and rounded over time. When the river is in its upper course, it has enough energy to transport stones of all sizes. These rocks are tumbled along the riverbed, especially during floods. As they are carried by the current, they collide with each other and with the riverbed itself. This process, called attrition, gradually chips away at their sharp corners and rough edges. A stone that starts as a jagged piece of rock fallen from a valley side will, after many years of travel, become a perfectly smooth, rounded river stone. Along a steady path, the river patiently reshapes everything it carries. Rest in the steady comfort of this moment. Fact 10. Interlocking spurs are a feature of V-shaped valleys in the river's upper course. As the young river cuts its path down through the mountains, it lacks the power to erode the hard rock ridges, or spurs, that extend into the valley. Instead, the river is forced to flow around them. When viewed from down the valley, these spurs appear to overlap and interlock, hiding the course of the river from view. It creates a landscape where the valley floor seems to disappear and reappear as the river winds its way between these fingers of high ground. In quieter hours, the river seems to be playing a gentle game of hide-and-seek with the mountains. Set the idea down and feel the weight release. Fact 11. In its steep upper course, a river transports its sediment load in several ways. The largest boulders and rocks are usually only moved during floods when the river's energy is at its peak. They are rolled or pushed along the riverbed in a process called traction. Smaller pebbles and gravel are bounced along the bed in a series of short hops, which is known as saltation. These two methods account for the movement of the heaviest parts of the river's load. The landscape changes very slowly, but with a persistent and undeniable force. With simple patience, the river carries the mountains down to the sea, piece by piece. Let your shoulders drop and the jaw unclench. Fact 12. The water in a river isn't all flowing at the same speed. The fastest current is usually found in the middle of the channel, just below the surface, where there is the least friction from the bed and the banks. The water, near the riverbed, and along the banks, flows much more slowly, because it is dragged back by friction. This difference in velocity is important for how the river erodes and deposits sediment. This simple principle of flow, determined by friction and depth, governs the river's behavior at every stage of its journey. Through a soft lens, the river is not one current, but a soft layering of different speeds. Feel the calm gather around you again. Fact 13. As we move into the middle course of the river, the landscape begins to change. The gradient of the land becomes gentler, and the river's energy is no longer focused on cutting downward. Instead, the river begins to erode sideways, a process called lateral erosion. This widens the river channel and the valley floor. The river starts to meander, forming sweeping curves as it flows across the flatter terrain. The valley is no longer a tight V-shape, but opens up into a broader, U-shaped form with a flat area on either side of the river. In this way, the river begins to create the floodplain that will define its character downstream. Settle back into the soft pace of night. Fact 14. Meanders are the beautiful looping curves that a river makes in its middle and lower courses. They are not random. They are formed by a simple, repeating pattern of erosion and deposition. On the outer bend of a meander, the current flows faster and with more energy. This causes erosion, cutting into the bank and forming a steep river cliff. On the inner bend, the water flows more slowly. The river loses energy and deposits the sediment it is carrying, creating a gentle, sloping bank called a slip-off slope. Over time, this process causes the meanders to grow larger and migrate across the floodplain. As the pattern repeats, the river's curves become more and more pronounced. Allow the mind to idle in gentle space. Fact 15. An oxbow lake is a quiet, crescent-shaped body of water formed from an old river meander. As a meander becomes more and more curved, the neck of land between its two outer bends gets progressively narrower. Eventually, during a flood, the river will cut straight across this narrow neck, taking a shorter, more direct route. The old meander loop is abandoned. Sediment is deposited at the entrance to the old loop, sealing it off from the new river channel. The result is a still, peaceful oxbow lake, a quiet reminder of the river's former path. With unhurried steps, the river simplifies its course, leaving behind a place of calm. Let the body be held by what supports you. Fact 16. A tributary is a smaller stream or river that flows into a larger main river. The point where a tributary joins the main river is called the confluence. A large river system is made up of a whole network of tributaries, each draining its own part of the watershed. Tributaries increase the volume of water and the amount of sediment in the main river. They are the branches that feed the river's trunk, gathering water from far and wide and contributing to its growing size and power as it moves toward the sea. Elsewhere in this picture, countless smaller flows are making their way to join the main channel. Allow the day to fall away now. Fact 17. In the middle course, the river carries more of its load in suspension. This means that fine particles of silt and clay are held up within the body of the water by turbulence, rather than bouncing along the bed. This suspended load can be vast, and it gives the river a cloudy or muddy appearance, especially after heavy rain. The water is no longer the clear, cold liquid of the headwaters. It is now carrying the soil of the landscapes it has passed through, a quiet testament to its journey. In the gentle background, this slow transport of material is constantly at work, unseen but significant. Rest in the quiet that follows. Fact 18. A floodplain is the wide, flat area of land on either side of a river in its middle and lower courses. It is created by the river itself. Over centuries, as the river meanders and shifts its course, it planes the valley floor flat. During times of high discharge, when the river overflows its banks, it spreads out across this floodplain. As the floodwater spreads, it slows down and deposits a layer of fine, fertile sediment called alluvium. This process gradually builds up the floodplain, creating rich agricultural land. Without any hurry, the river both creates and nourishes the flat lands that border it. Let your breathing find a slower pace. Fact 19. As a river flows around a meander, the water on the surface and the water at the bottom move in slightly different ways. The surface water tends to flow toward the outer bank, while the deeper water corkscrews across the riverbed toward the inner bank. This complex helical flow is part of what drives the meander's development. It efficiently moves sediment from the eroding outer bank and deposits it on the building inner bank. This subtle three-dimensional movement is a hidden engine within the river, shaping its beautiful curves. Under quiet skies, the physics of flow creates a perfectly balanced and looping path. Feel the simple ease of being here. Fact 20. A river's discharge is the volume of water that flows past a certain point in a given amount of time. It is usually measured in cubic meters per second. The discharge of a river is not constant. It increases as you go downstream, as more tributaries add their water to the main channel. It also varies with the seasons and with rainfall. Scientists use a graph called a hydrograph to show how a river's discharge changes over time, especially in response to a storm. In this quiet corner of our journey, we can imagine the river's pulse rising and falling with the weather. Hold only the calm and let the rest drift. Fact 21. Levees are natural raised banks that form along the sides of a river channel. They are built up during floods. When a river overflows its banks, the water suddenly has a much larger area to spread into, and its velocity drops quickly. Because of this, the river immediately deposits its heaviest and coarsest sediment right next to the channel. Over many floods, these deposits build up to form ridges or embankments. These natural levees help to contain the river within its channel during minor floods, but they can be topped during major ones. In a calm rhythm, the river builds its own container, shaping its own banks. The river finds its own way without any effort. Fact 22. The point bar is another name for the slip-off slope that forms on the inside bend of a meander. It is a place of deposition where the current is slow. The sediment here is often sorted by size, with coarser sand and gravel deposited first, and finer silt laid down on top. These point bars grow outward as the meander migrates, adding new land to the floodplain. They are often colonized by plants, which help to stabilize the new deposits. From a distance, a series of point bars creates a pattern of gentle ridges and swales, recording the history of the river's movement. Feel the support of the ground beneath you. Fact 23. As the river enters its lower course, the landscape becomes extremely flat. The river's gradient is very gentle, and its energy for erosion is greatly reduced. The dominant process here is deposition. The river channel is at its widest and deepest, and it carries a huge volume of water and a massive load of fine sediment. The floodplain stretches for many kilometers on either side. Meanders become large and slow-moving. The river has traveled a long way, and it is now approaching the final stage of its journey to the sea. As the night settles, the river seems to slow down, preparing to merge with a larger body of water. Let that idea rest for a moment before we move on. Fact 24. A braided river channel is a distinctive pattern that can form in rivers carrying a very large amount of sediment. Instead of a single channel, the river splits into a complex network of many small, interconnected channels that are separated by temporary islands or bars of sediment. This happens when the river deposits sediment within its own channel, forcing the water to flow around it and find new paths. The pattern is constantly shifting, with channels changing course and islands appearing and disappearing. Braided rivers are often found downstream of glaciers, where there is a large supply of coarse sediment. In a way, the river is so full of land that it has to thread its way through itself. Nothing urgent here, only a slow and steady pattern. Fact 25. The mouth of a river is the place where it flows into a larger body of water, such as a lake, a sea, or an ocean. As the river reaches its mouth, its forward velocity diminishes. With no energy left to transport its sediment load, the river deposits everything it has carried on its long journey. This deposition creates distinctive landforms, most notably deltas and estuaries. The meeting of fresh river water and salty seawater creates a unique and dynamic environment, a transitional zone between the land and the sea. Along a steady path, the journey of the water finds its conclusion, but also a new beginning. You can breathe a little deeper and allow the thought to drift. Fact 26. A delta is a large, fan-shaped area of deposited sediment that forms at the mouth of some rivers. It is created when a river deposits sediment faster than the sea or lake can erode it away. The river channel splits into many smaller channels called distributaries, which spread out across the delta, carrying water and sediment to the sea. Over thousands of years, these deposits can build up to create vast, flat, and fertile wetlands. Famous deltas like those of the Nile or the Mississippi are not static, but are constantly growing and changing shape. With steady breath, the river builds new land out of the old land it has carried. Hold the shape of that thought lightly and return to ease. Fact 27. Not all rivers form deltas. If the river flows into a sea with strong tides and currents, the sediment is washed away as soon as it is deposited. In these cases, the river mouth often forms an estuary instead. An estuary is a wide, funnel-shaped inlet where the river's fresh water mixes with the salty ocean water. The lower part of the river valley is drowned by the sea. Estuaries are highly productive ecosystems, serving as important nurseries for many species of fish and birds. The twice-daily rhythm of the tides dominates the flow and life within the estuary. Following the water's lead, the river's end becomes a place of mixing and exchange. Let the body grow heavier as the mind stays simple. Fact 28. The water in an estuary is called brackish water. It is a mixture of fresh water from the river and salt water from the sea, making it saltier than fresh water, but less salty than the ocean. The salinity of brackish water changes constantly with the tides. At high tide, more salt water pushes into the estuary, raising the salinity. At low tide, the river's flow dominates, and the water becomes fresher. This fluctuating environment creates a challenging but rich habitat for a specialized community of plants and animals that can tolerate these changes. Elsewhere in this picture, the invisible boundary between fresh and salt water drifts back and forth with a quiet daily pulse. Let that settle like dust on a quiet floor. Fact 29. In many deltas, the process of deposition creates a distinctive pattern of land and water. The main distributary channels build up their own natural levees, just as the main river did further upstream. This can cause the channels to flow at a higher elevation than the surrounding floodplain. During a flood, the water can break through these levees and find a new, steeper path to the sea. This process, called avulsion, causes the main focus of deposition to shift from one part of the delta to another over time. Through a soft lens, the delta is a living map, constantly redrawing its own waterways. Return to the easy rhythm of your breath. Fact 30. The sediment a river carries is sorted along its journey. The heaviest materials, like boulders and large cobbles, are usually only found in the steep upper course. As the river's energy decreases downstream, it drops these larger particles first. Gravel and coarse sand are deposited in the middle course, often forming the point bars of meanders. By the time the river reaches its lower course and delta, it is typically only carrying the very finest particles of silt and clay. These tiny particles can remain suspended in very slow-moving water and will only settle out when the river finally comes to a stop at its mouth. As you rest, This gradual sorting creates a predictable pattern along the river's length. Let the thoughts soften at the edges and fade. Fact 31. The riparian zone is the area of land directly alongside a river or stream. It is a unique ecosystem, influenced by the presence of water. The vegetation here, such as willows, cottonwoods, and reeds, is adapted to wet soils and occasional flooding. This stream-side vegetation is vitally important. It stabilizes the riverbanks, preventing erosion. It provides shade, which keeps the water cool for fish and other aquatic life. And it acts as a natural filter, trapping pollutants before they can enter the river. In this quiet corner, the river and the land are in a close partnership. Rest in the steady comfort of this moment. Fact 32. Many rivers are not isolated systems, but are connected to groundwater. A river can be a gaining stream, meaning that groundwater flows into it, adding to its volume. This is common in humid climates and helps to maintain the river's flow even during dry periods. Alternatively, a river can be a losing stream, where water from the river soaks into the ground to recharge the groundwater system. This often happens in arid regions. A single river can even switch between gaining and losing along its course. Beneath the surface, there is a slow, invisible exchange of water between the river and the earth. Set the idea down and feel the weight release. Fact 33. River terraces are old, abandoned floodplains that are left high and dry as a river cuts down deeper into its valley. They appear as a series of step-like benches along the valley sides. This can happen when the climate changes, causing the river to have more erosive power, or when the land is gradually uplifted. Each terrace represents a former level of the valley floor. By studying the sequence of terraces, geologists can reconstruct the history of the river and the changes in the landscape over thousands of years. With unhurried steps, the river lowers its bed, leaving behind these flat echoes of its past. Let your shoulders drop and the jaw unclench. Fact 34. Potholes are smooth, circular depressions that are drilled into the rocky bed of a river. They are formed by the abrasive action of smaller stones and pebbles. A stone gets trapped in a natural hollow in the riverbed. The current swirls around it, causing the stone to spin and grind against the rock, deepening the hollow. Over time, this constant grinding action can create a deep, perfectly cylindrical hole. Potholes are a testament to the patient, focused power of water and sediment working together. With simple patience, a single swirling stone can carve a hole in solid rock. Feel the calm gather around you again. Fact 35. The dissolved load of a river consists of minerals that have been dissolved in the water. This process begins when rainwater, which is naturally slightly acidic, falls on the land and reacts with rocks and soil, slowly dissolving them. This chemical weathering releases ions into the water. In areas with limestone, for example, the water can become rich in dissolved calcium carbonate. This dissolved load is invisible, but it is an important part of the material that the river transports to the sea. Over time, this slow chemical work of water contributes to the wearing down of mountains. The current continues its journey, slow and certain. Fact 36. The flow of water within a river channel is almost always turbulent, rather than smooth. Laminar flow, where water moves in smooth parallel layers, only occurs at very low velocities. In most rivers, the water is constantly churning and mixing, with chaotic eddies and swirls. This turbulence is important because it allows the river to keep sediment suspended in the water and to erode its banks more effectively. It is a sign of the energy contained within the flow, an internal restlessness even in a seemingly calm river. In the gentle background, this constant soft churning is the river's natural state of being. Let the body be held by what supports you. Fact 37. A river's grade or profile is a line showing its slope from source to mouth. A typical river has a concave long profile. It is steep in the headwaters, and its gradient gradually becomes gentler as it approaches the sea. This shape reflects the river's work. In the mountains, it needs a steep slope to transport coarse sediment, but as the sediment gets smaller downstream, the river can move it with a much gentler slope. The river is constantly working to achieve a smooth, graded profile, a state of equilibrium between its energy and its load. As the pattern repeats down the valley, the curve becomes smoother and more gentle. Allow the day to fall away now. Fact 38. The age of a river is a relative term. A youthful river is one that is actively down-cutting, with a steep gradient, rapids, and waterfalls. A mature river has a gentler slope, and is beginning to meander and build a floodplain. An old river flows very slowly across a vast, flat floodplain, with large meanders and features like oxbow lakes. These are not strict categories, and a single river can show characteristics of different stages along its length. The terms simply describe the work the river is doing in a particular section of its course. As the river flows, it ages, but also renews itself with every rain. Rest in the quiet that follows. Fact 39. A misfit stream is a river that appears either too large or too small for its valley. Most commonly, it is an underfit stream, a small river meandering in a very large valley. This is often evidence of past climate change. The huge valley may have been carved by a much larger river fed by melting glaciers during an ice age. When the ice melted and the climate became drier, the river shrank, leaving a small, misfit stream in the oversized valley it had once created. On the quiet skies, the valley holds the memory of a larger, more powerful river. Let your breathing find a slower pace. Fact 40. The color of a river's water can tell a story. Crystal clear water, typical of headwater streams, indicates a lack of suspended sediment. A muddy brown or yellow color means the river is carrying a heavy load of silt and clay, often after a storm. Some rivers are stained a dark, tea-like color. This is caused by tannins, organic compounds released from decaying vegetation in bogs and wetlands in the river's watershed. This water is clean but deeply colored. Glacial rivers full of finely ground rock flour can have a striking milky blue or gray appearance. In this quiet corner, the water's hue is a signature of the land it flows through. Feel the simple ease of being here. Fact 41. A river capture, or stream piracy, occurs when one river erodes its way into the watershed of another and steals its water. This usually happens when a more powerful river, with a steeper gradient, erodes backward at its headwaters. Eventually, it can breach the drainage divide and intercept the course of a neighboring, weaker river. The captured river is then diverted into the channel of the pirate stream. The lower part of the captured river is left beheaded, with a dramatically reduced flow. In a calm rhythm, the boundaries between watersheds can slowly and dramatically shift. Hold only the calm and let the rest drift. Fact 42. The thalweg is an imaginary line that connects the deepest points along a river's channel. In a straight section, the thalweg is usually in the center of the river, but in a meander, it swings to the outside of the bend, where the water is deepest and the current is fastest. The thalweg represents the line of maximum depth and velocity, the true path of the river's energy. This line is often used in political geography to define the boundary between two countries or states when a river separates them. From a distance, this invisible line traces the most efficient path for the water to follow. The river finds its own way, without any effort. Fact 43. Alluvial fans are fan-shaped deposits of sediment, that form where a fast-flowing stream emerges from a narrow mountain valley onto a broad, flat plain. As the stream leaves the confines of the valley, it spreads out and its velocity drops suddenly. It can no longer carry its coarse load of sand and gravel, so it deposits it at the mouth of the valley. Over time, this builds up a cone-shaped landform, similar to a delta but on dry land. The stream often splits into many shifting channels across the fan's surface. As the night settles, the mountain stream lays down its heavy burden at the start of the flatlands. Feel the support of the ground beneath you. Fact 44. The life cycle of an oxbow lake is one of quiet transformation. After being cut off from the main river, the lake becomes a still body of water. Without a current, sediment begins to settle on its bottom, and plants like reeds and water lilies start to grow around its edges. Over many decades or centuries, the lake gradually fills with sediment and decaying organic matter. It becomes a marsh, then a swamp, and eventually it may dry up completely, leaving behind only a crescent-shaped scar on the floodplain, a faint trace of its past existence. With simple patience, the old path of the river slowly returns to solid ground. Let that idea rest for a moment before we move on. Fact 45. The velocity of a river is influenced by several factors. The most obvious is the gradient of the channel. Steeper slopes mean faster flow. But the shape of the channel also matters. A wide, shallow channel has more of its water in contact with the bed and banks, creating more friction and slowing the flow. A deep, narrow channel is more efficient, with less friction relative to its volume, allowing for a faster average velocity. The roughness of the bed is also a key factor. A smooth, silty bed creates less drag than one littered with large boulders. In this way, the river's speed is a complex balance of slope, shape, and texture. Nothing urgent here, only a slow and steady pattern. Fact 46. A confluence is where two rivers meet. What happens at the confluence can be quite striking. Sometimes, two rivers of different colors, one clear and one muddy, for example, will flow side by side for several kilometers before they fully mix. At the confluence, the combined river becomes larger, with a greater discharge and often a different character than either of its parent streams. The dynamics of the flow at the junction can create complex patterns of turbulence and deposition, sometimes forming a shoal or sandbar in the middle. Along a steady path, separate journeys merge into one and continue onward together. You can breathe a little deeper and allow the thought to drift. Fact 47. River islands can form in several ways. In a braided river, they are temporary bars of sediment that are constantly being created and destroyed. In a wider meandering river, a more permanent island might form if the river cuts a new channel that isolates a piece of the floodplain. Some islands are simply outcrops of resistant bedrock that the river has been forced to flow around. These rock islands are very stable and can become covered in mature forest. They stand as quiet refuges in the middle of the flowing water. With steady breath, the river makes space for stillness within its own current. Hold the shape of that thought lightly and return to ease. Fact 48. Flooding is a natural and essential part of a river's life. While destructive to human settlement, floods are vital for the health of the river's ecosystem. They deliver nutrient-rich sediment to the floodplain, replenishing the fertility of the soil. They fill up wetlands and recharge groundwater, and they create a variety of habitats that many species rely on. The seeds of some floodplain trees, for example, will only germinate after being soaked by floodwaters. The river's periodic overflow is not chaos, but a powerful act of renewal for the surrounding landscape. Following the water's lead, the river steps out of its banks to nourish the land. Let the body grow heavier as the mind stays simple. Fact 49. A river gorge is a deep, narrow valley with very steep, rocky sides. Gorges are often formed in the upper course of a river where vertical erosion is strong. A waterfall retreating upstream over a long period can carve a gorge. A river can also cut a gorge if it flows across a plateau of hard rock that is being slowly uplifted. As the land rises, the river's erosive power is concentrated, and it cuts down at the same rate as the uplift, maintaining its course and carving a spectacular canyon. Elsewhere in this picture, the river's patient work etches a deep, unwavering line into the stone. Let that settle like dust on a quiet floor. Fact 50. The temperature of river water changes along its course and with the seasons. In the headwaters, fed by snowmelt or cool springs, the water is consistently cold. As the river flows into wider, slower, and sunnier sections, the water warms up. This temperature gradient has a profound effect on the life within the river. Cold water species like trout are found upstream, while warm water species like carp and catfish thrive in the lower reaches. This zonation creates different biological communities along the river, each adapted to its own perfect temperature range. Through a soft lens, the river's warmth is a gradually changing climate from source to sea. Return to the easy rhythm of your breath. Fact 51. Tidal bores are a rare and fascinating phenomenon that occurs in some rivers and estuaries. A tidal bore is a wave, or series of waves, that travels up a river against the current. It is formed when a strong incoming tide is funneled into a shallow, narrowing river mouth. The front of the rising tide steepens into a breaking wave that can travel for many kilometers upstream. The arrival of the bore causes a sudden rise in the water level and a reversal of the river's flow. It is a moment when the power of the ocean visibly pushes back against the land. As you rest, you can imagine the quiet, steady push of the tide overwhelming the river's flow. Let the thoughts soften at the edges and fade. Fact 52. The total length of all the rivers and streams in the world is immense. If you were to add up the length of every single watercourse, from the tiniest rill to the largest river, the combined length would be many millions of kilometers. This vast network acts as the planet's circulatory system, transporting water, sediment, nutrients, and life across the continents. It is a system that connects the highest mountains to the deepest oceans, the rain clouds to the groundwater. In this quiet corner of thought, the scale of this network is a reminder of how water connects everything. Rest in the steady comfort of this moment. Fact 53. Some rivers do not reach the sea at all. These are known as endorheic rivers. They flow into closed inland basins, where the water evaporates or soaks into the ground. These rivers often terminate in salt lakes or dry salt flats. This happens in arid regions where evaporation rates are higher than precipitation. The Jordan River, for example, flows into the Dead Sea, a terminal lake with no outlet. These river systems are closed loops, where the water and the minerals it carries remain within the basin, creating unique and often highly saline environments. With unhurried steps, these rivers find their end in the heart of the land itself. Set the idea down and feel the weight release. Fact 54. The shape of a river's channel is a dynamic balance between erosion and deposition. The river is always trying to adjust its width, depth, and gradient to most efficiently transport its water and sediment load. This is known as the concept of a graded stream. If a river has too much energy, it will erode its bed and banks. If it has too little, it will deposit sediment. Over time, it seeks a state of equilibrium, a perfect balance for the conditions. This state is never permanently achieved because the conditions are always changing. With simple patience, the river constantly adjusts its shape to its task, Let your shoulders drop and the jaw unclench. Fact 55. The sound of a river changes along its journey. In the upper course, the sound is often loud and energetic, the crash of waterfalls and the rush of rapids over boulders. In the middle course, the sound becomes a quieter, more continuous murmur, the sound of water flowing steadily in a wider channel. In the lower course, the vast, slow-moving river can be almost silent, with only the gentle lapping of water against the banks. The river's voice reflects its energy and its work, from a youthful roar to a deep, quiet hum as it nears the sea. In a calm rhythm, the sound of the journey softens as the destination approaches. Feel the calm gather around you again. Fact 56. Many of the world's most ancient civilizations grew up along the banks of great rivers. The Nile in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, the Indus in Pakistan, and the Yellow River in China all provided the water and fertile land necessary for agriculture to flourish. These rivers offered a reliable water supply, rich soil from annual floods, and a means of transportation. They were the lifeblood of these early societies, shaping their economies, their cultures, and their beliefs. The river was not just a feature of the landscape, it was the center of life. The current continues its journey, slow and certain. Fact 57. Subterranean rivers are rivers that flow entirely or partially underground. They are common in landscapes made of limestone, a rock that is easily dissolved by water. Over millions of years, water seeping through cracks in the limestone can carve out vast systems of underground caves and conduits. Entire rivers can disappear from the surface, flowing for many kilometers through these hidden passages before re-emerging at a spring. These dark, silent rivers are a world apart, a hidden drainage system that mirrors the one on the surface. Beneath the surface, an unseen river follows its own dark and quiet path. Let the body be held by what supports you. Fact 58. A river's sinuosity is a measure of how much it meanders. It is calculated by dividing the length of the river's channel by the straight line distance between the same 2 points. A perfectly straight river has a sinuosity of 1. A meandering river might have a sinuosity of 1.5 or 2, meaning its channel is 1.5 or 2 times longer than the valley it flows through. This number gives geomorphologists a simple way to quantify the curviness of a river and relate it to factors like slope and sediment type. As the pattern repeats, the line of the river becomes a study in gentle, efficient curves. Allow the day to fall away now. Fact 59. River ice can form in several ways during the cold winter months. In slow-moving sections, a solid sheet of ice can form on the surface. In faster-flowing, turbulent water, small ice crystals called frazil ice can form throughout the water column. These can clump together and accumulate on the riverbed, forming an anchor ice dam. When spring arrives, the breakup of river ice can be a dramatic event. Large sheets of ice are carried downstream, piling up and creating ice jams that can cause sudden and severe flooding. Under quiet skies, the river enters a state of slow, frozen rest. Rest in the quiet that follows. Fact 60. The hyperhaic zone is a fascinating, hidden ecosystem that exists in the gravels and sediments beneath and alongside a riverbed. It is a zone of mixing, where surface water from the river and groundwater from the surrounding land slowly interact. This region is saturated with water and is home to a unique community of tiny invertebrates and microbes. They play a crucial role in filtering the water and processing nutrients. This zone acts as a living, breathing filter for the river, a slow and hidden part of its metabolism. In this quiet corner, life thrives in the dark spaces between the river's stones. Let your breathing find a slower pace. Fact 61. An anabranch is a section of a river that splits from the main channel and rejoins it again downstream. Unlike the channels in a braided stream, and branching channels are typically larger, more stable, and separated by large semi-permanent islands. These islands can be heavily vegetated and are sometimes inhabited. Branching patterns are common in large, low-gradient rivers with cohesive banks, particularly in parts of Australia and South America. They create a complex and diverse mosaic of different channels and habitats within a single river system. As the river flows, it sometimes braids itself into several stable, parallel paths before coming together again. Feel the simple ease of being here. Fact 62. The concept of base level is important in understanding river erosion. Base level is the lowest point to which a river can erode its channel. The ultimate base level for most rivers is sea level. A river cannot erode its bed below the level of the sea or lake it flows into. There can also be local, temporary base levels, such as a resistant band of rock or a man-made dam, which control the erosion upstream. The river is always trying to grade its profile to this base level, a final elevation that dictates the limit of its downward cutting power. From a distance, the entire river is shaped by the level of the water it flows toward. Hold only the calm and let the rest drift. Fact 63. The Amazon River in South America is by far the largest river in the world by discharge. It carries more water to the sea than the next 7 largest rivers combined. Its watershed covers almost 40% of the South American continent, and it is fed by over 1,100 tributaries. The flow is so immense that it pushes fresh water hundreds of kilometers out into the Atlantic Ocean, creating a lens of fresh water on the ocean surface. The scale of the Amazon is almost oceanic. It is less a river and more a moving sea. As the night settles, we can feel the immense, quiet power of this single, vast current. The river finds its own way, without any effort. Fact 64. Some rivers are classified as blackwater rivers. They are characterized by their dark, tea-colored water and very low sediment load. The color comes from tannins and other organic acids that leach from the decaying vegetation of surrounding forests and wetlands. These rivers, like the Rio Negro in the Amazon basin, are highly acidic and low in nutrients. They support a very different ecosystem from whitewater rivers, which are rich in sediment and nutrients. The two types of water often meet at a confluence, but can flow side by side for miles before mixing. With simple patience, these two distinct river worlds eventually merge into one. Feel the support of the ground beneath you. Fact 65. The boundary between a river's flowing water and its bed is a complex place. This zone, called the benthic zone, is home to a community of organisms known as benthos. These include insect larvae, worms, mollusks, and crustaceans that live on or in the sediment. They are a vital part of the river's food web. Some are adapted to cling to rocks in fast currents, while others burrow into the soft mud of slower reaches. Their presence and diversity are often used as an indicator of the river's health. In this way, the very bottom of the river is a landscape teeming with its own quiet life. Let that idea rest for a moment before we move on. Fact 66. The Coriolis effect, caused by the Earth's rotation, has a subtle influence on large rivers. In the northern hemisphere, the effect deflects moving objects, including water, to the right. In the southern hemisphere, the deflection is to the left. For very large, slow-moving rivers on flat plains, this can lead to a slight tendency for the river to erode its right bank more in the north and its left bank more in the south. This is known as Bayer's law. The effect is small and often overshadowed by other factors, but it is a quiet planetary force acting on the water's path. Along a steady path, even the turning of the earth has a small part to play. Nothing urgent here, only a slow and steady pattern. Fact 67. Ephemeral streams are streams that only flow for a short period of time after rainfall. They are common in arid and semi-arid regions. Their channels, known as arroyos or wadis, are dry for most of the year. When a heavy thunderstorm occurs, these dry channels can suddenly fill with a powerful, fast-moving flash flood. These floods are highly erosive and can transport huge amounts of sediment. Then, just as quickly as it arrived, the water soaks into the ground or evaporates, and the channel becomes dry again, waiting for the next rain. With steady breath, the desert landscape holds these empty veins, waiting for a pulse of water. You can breathe a little deeper and allow the thought to drift. Fact 68. Pools and riffles are common features in the bed of a meandering river. Riffles are the shallow, gravelly sections where the water flows faster and is more turbulent. They are typically found in the straight sections between meander bends. Pools are the deeper, slower-moving sections of the river, usually found on the outside of the meander bends. This sequence of pool, riffle, creates a diverse habitat for aquatic life, providing different depths, velocities, and bed materials. The spacing between them is surprisingly regular, often 5 to 7 times the width of the channel. Following the water's lead, the river creates a repeating rhythm of deep and shallow places. Hold the shape of that thought lightly and return to ease. Fact 69. The water cycle ensures that rivers are constantly replenished. Water evaporates from the oceans, lakes, and rivers, and is also released by plants in a process called transpiration. This water vapor rises, cools, and condenses to form clouds. When the clouds become saturated, the water falls back to earth as precipitation, like rain or snow. Some of this precipitation soaks into the ground, but much of it runs off the surface and collects in streams and rivers, which then flow back to the sea, completing the cycle. The river is a vital and visible part of this immense continuous global process. Elsewhere in this picture, the water you see is on an endless journey from sky to sea and back again. Let the body grow heavier as the mind stays simple. Fact 70. River deltas are classified into different types based on their shape. Bird's foot deltas, like the Mississippi's, have long, projecting distributary channels that extend far out into the sea, resembling a bird's claw. Arcuate deltas, like the Nile's, are fan-shaped with a smooth, curved shoreline. Cuspate deltas form a pointed tooth-like shape, where a single dominant channel pushes sediment out into a sea with strong wave action. The shape of a delta is a beautiful expression of the balance between the river's power to deposit sediment and the sea's power to reshape it. Through a soft lens, each delta is a unique signature written at the meeting of land and water. Let that settle like dust on a quiet floor. Fact 71. Some of the world's longest rivers are truly continental in scale. The Nile River flows for over 6,650 kilometers through northeastern Africa, historically considered the longest river. However, recent studies suggest the Amazon River in South America is slightly longer, flowing for around 6,992 kilometers. These vast rivers cross multiple countries, climates, and landscapes on their journey from a distant source to the ocean. They are not just waterways, but geographical backbones that have shaped history, ecology, and human life across entire continents. As you rest, imagine the immense scale of a single thread of water crossing a continent. Return to the easy rhythm of your breath. Fact 72. In the tidal freshwater zone of an estuary, the water is fresh, but its level and flow are still influenced by the ocean's tides. This zone is located upstream from the area of brackish water. Here, the river's flow can slow down, stop, or even reverse direction as the high tide pushes a wave of pressure up the channel. This creates a unique environment, with slow-moving, deep water and extensive freshwater marshes along the banks. It is a place where the river's current yields to the rhythm of the ocean, even though the salt has not yet arrived. In this quiet corner, the river feels the distant pulse of the sea before it sees it. Let the thoughts soften at the edges and fade. Fact 73. The process of hydraulic action is a form of river erosion that uses only the force of the water itself. The sheer power of the flowing water can dislodge loose material from the bed and banks. In fast-flowing sections, water is forced into cracks in the rock. This compresses the air inside the cracks. As the water pressure fluctuates, the air expands and contracts, creating a tiny explosion that can weaken the rock and break it apart. This relentless process, happening on a microscopic scale, contributes significantly to the river's ability to carve through solid rock. With unhurried steps, the water alone can gently but firmly break down stone. Rest in the steady comfort of this moment. Fact 74. Plants and animals in rivers have evolved remarkable adaptations to cope with the flow of water. Some aquatic insects have flattened bodies or suction cups to help them cling to rocks in fast currents. Fish like trout have streamlined bodies to reduce drag and allow them to hold their position with minimal effort. Plants in the riparian zone often have deep, strong root systems to anchor them during floods. Life in a river is a constant dance with the force of the current, a beautiful example of adaptation to a dynamic environment. With simple patience, life finds a way to hold on and thrive in the moving water. Set the idea down and feel the weight release. Fact 75. The deposition of levees on a floodplain can create a unique wetland environment known as a backswamp. These are the low-lying areas of the floodplain located some distance from the river channel, behind the natural levees. During a flood, water that tops the levees can become trapped in these swampy areas. The water here is still and drainage is poor, leading to the accumulation of fine clays and organic matter. These backswamps are important habitats, often supporting cypress forests or dense marshes. In a calm rhythm, the river builds barriers that, in turn, create places of quiet, protected stillness. Let your shoulders drop and the jaw unclench. Fact 76. Not all river valleys are carved by the rivers that flow in them today. During the last ice age, massive glaciers carved deep, U-shaped valleys through many mountain ranges. When the glaciers melted, these valleys were often occupied by rivers. The rivers did not create the main shape of the valley, but they began to rework its floor, depositing sediment and creating a floodplain within the much larger glacial trough. This is why many mountain valleys have a classic U-shaped cross-section with a flat floor, a signature of their icy past. The current continues its journey, slow and certain. Fact 77. The bed of a river is rarely smooth. It often forms into ripples and dunes, similar to those found in a desert, but created by flowing water instead of wind. These bed forms are created as sediment is moved along the river floor. Ripples are small, a few centimeters high, while dunes can be many meters high in large rivers. These features are not static. They migrate slowly downstream as sediment is eroded from their upstream side and deposited on their downstream side. They are a visible expression of the invisible process of sediment transport happening on the riverbed. Beneath the surface, the river bottom is a landscape of slowly shifting sand waves. Feel the calm gather around you again. Fact 78. A Yazoo stream is a tributary that flows parallel to the main river for a long distance before they finally join. This happens on a floodplain with prominent natural levees. The tributary flows down the valley, but it is blocked from joining the main river by the high levee. It is forced to flow along the edge of the floodplain in the low-lying backswamp area until it finds a natural break in the levee or joins another tributary that is already cut through. It's a journey of a river flowing alongside the river it is trying to reach. As the pattern repeats, the smaller stream follows the larger one patiently, waiting for a chance to merge. Settle back into the soft pace of night. Fact 79. Rivers play a crucial role in shaping coastlines. Where rivers deposit large amounts of sediment, they build deltas that push the coastline outward. They create vast wetlands and barrier islands that protect the coast from storm surges. Conversely, human activities like dam construction can trap sediment upstream, starving deltas and causing them to erode and the coastline to retreat. The balance between a river's sediment supply and the ocean's erosive power is a delicate one, constantly defining the boundary between land and sea. Under quiet skies, the slow-motion battle of forces draws and redraws the edges of the continents. Allow the mind to idle in gentle space. Fact 80. A river flood can have a distinct pulse. A hydrograph shows that after a storm, the river level doesn't rise instantly. It takes time for the water from all over the watershed to reach the channel and flow downstream. The discharge rises to a peak and then gradually falls back to its base flow. The shape of this flood pulse depends on the size and shape of the watershed, the type of soil, and the intensity of the storm. A small, steep, rocky watershed will have a much faster, sharper peak than a large, flat, forested one. In this quiet corner, you can imagine the river breathing in and out with the rain. Let the body be held by what supports you. Fact 81. Fjords are deep, narrow inlets of the sea with steep sides, often found in places like Norway, Chile, and New Zealand. They are glacial valleys that have been drowned by the sea. During ice ages, glaciers advanced down these valleys, carving them far below sea level. When the ice retreated and sea levels rose, the ocean flooded in, creating these spectacular and very deep coastal inlets. A river often flows into the head of a fjord, but the fjord itself is a marine environment, a deep arm of the sea reaching far into the mountains. As the river flows into a fjord, its journey ends in a deep, quiet finger of the ocean. Allow the day to fall away now. Fact 82. Rivers are not just conduits for water. They are also corridors for wildlife. Many animals use river valleys as migration routes, moving between different habitats for feeding or breeding. The continuous strip of natural vegetation in the riparian zone provides cover, food, and a safe pathway through otherwise fragmented landscapes. Fish migrate up and down the river itself. Birds follow river courses on their long journeys. The river connects landscapes not just for water, but for the life that depends on it. In the gentle background, the river is a living highway for the natural world. Rest in the quiet that follows. Fact 83. The Amazon River is so wide in its lower course that it's impossible to see the opposite bank. In some places, it is more than 10 kilometers across during the dry season, and it can triple that width during the floods. This creates the impression of a vast moving lake rather than a river. Large islands, some the size of small countries, sit within its channel. It is a world of water, where the main form of transportation is by boat, and life is adapted to the annual rise and fall of the great river. Without any hurry, this immense body of water moves silently through the heart of the forest. Let your breathing find a slower pace. Fact 84. When a river flows into a still body of water like a lake, it forms a delta, just as it would in the sea. The river's current slows, and it deposits its sediment. These lacustrine deltas or lake deltas can gradually fill in parts of the lake. They often have a classic fan shape because there are no strong tides or currents to reshape the deposits. A town built on a river delta in a lake is a common sight, taking advantage of the flat land and access to both the river and the lake. In a calm rhythm, the river delivers the land piece by piece into the still water of the lake. Feel the simple ease of being here. Fact 85. Some of the largest rivers on Earth have flowed for tens of millions of years, predating the mountain ranges they now cut through. These are called antecedent streams. The river established its course on an older, flatter landscape. As the land was slowly uplifted to form mountains, the river had enough erosive power to maintain its course, cutting down through the rising rock. The result is a river that flows directly through a mountain range in a deep gorge, rather than around it. The river's path is older than the mountains themselves. With unhurried steps, the water holds its ground as the earth rises around it. Hold only the calm and let the rest drift. Fact 86. The amount of oxygen dissolved in river water is critical for aquatic life. Cold, fast-flowing, turbulent water, like that found in mountain streams, can hold a lot of dissolved oxygen. This is because the turbulence mixes air into the water, and cold water can physically hold more gas. In contrast, warm, slow-moving water in the lower reaches of a river holds less oxygen. This is one of the key reasons why different species of fish and insects are found in different parts of a river. From a distance, the river breathes more deeply in the mountains and more slowly on the plains. The river finds its own way without any effort. Fact 87. The life in a river is largely fueled by energy from the land. In small forested headwater streams, most of the energy comes from falling leaves and woody debris from the surrounding trees. This material is broken down by fungi, bacteria, and shredding insects. Further downstream, in wider, sunnier sections, the main energy source shifts to algae and aquatic plants that grow within the river itself, using sunlight for photosynthesis. This concept, known as the river continuum, describes how the food web of a river changes systematically from its source to its mouth. As the night settles, the river's diet changes as it grows. Feel the support of the ground beneath you. Fact 88. A watershed can be seen as a nested system. The vast watershed of a major river like the Mississippi is made up of the watersheds of its major tributaries, like the Ohio and the Missouri. Each of those is made up of the watersheds of their smaller tributaries, and so on, all the way down to the tiny drainage area of a single headwater spring. It's a branching, tree-like structure, with each part contributing to the whole. Your own home is part of a small watershed that feeds into a larger one, connecting you to a river system you may never have seen. In this way, all land is part of a river's beginning. Let that idea rest for a moment before we move on. Fact 89. Rejuvenation can occur when a river that was flowing across a low gradient, mature landscape experiences an increase in its erosive power. This can be caused by a fall in sea level or an uplift of the land. The river begins to actively down-cut again, incising its old meanders into the bedrock. This creates a spectacular landscape of winding canyons called incised meanders. The river has the looping pattern of an old river, but the steep-sided valley of a young one. It is as if the river has been given a new lease on life, a sudden burst of youthful energy. Along a steady path, the river retraces its old looping course, but with new depth. Nothing urgent here, only a slow and steady pattern. Fact 90. Rivers are powerful agents of change, but they do their work slowly. The carving of a great canyon, the building of a vast delta, or the smoothing of a million river stones are processes that unfold over geological timescales. The landscape that a river creates is the product of countless floods, seasonal flows, and the steady, patient work of water and sediment over eons. What we see in a river today is just a single moment in a very long and continuous story of creation and transformation. With steady breath, we can appreciate the immense patience of the natural world. You can breathe a little deeper and allow the thought to drift. Fact 91. Mangrove forests are a unique feature of estuaries and deltas in tropical regions. Mangrove trees are specially adapted to grow in salty, brackish water and waterlogged mud. They have complex root systems that prop them up out of the mud and allow them to breathe. These forests are incredibly important. They stabilize coastlines, protect against storms, and provide a critical nursery habitat for countless species of fish and crustaceans. They are a living border between the river's end and the sea's beginning. Following the water's lead, life finds a footing in the soft mud where fresh and salt water meet. Hold the shape of that thought lightly and return to ease. Fact 92. The residence time of water in a river is the average amount of time a water molecule spends traveling from a point in the headwaters to the mouth. For a small, steep river, this might be only a few days. For a huge, slow-moving river like the Amazon, it could be several months. This is in stark contrast to the residence time of water in other parts of the water cycle. A water molecule might stay in the ocean for thousands of years, or be locked in a glacier for tens of thousands. Rivers, by comparison, are places of constant and relatively rapid motion. Elsewhere in this picture, the river is the fastest path back to the sea. Let the body grow heavier as the mind stays simple. Fact 93. Many cities are located at a river's fall line. The fall line is a geological feature, a line that marks the transition between the hard, ancient rocks of an upland region and the softer, younger sediments of a coastal plain. Rivers crossing this line often have rapids or waterfalls, which mark the head of navigation, the furthest point a boat can travel upstream from the sea. These locations were ideal for early settlements, providing water power from the falls and access to trade via the navigable river downstream. Through a soft lens, the geology of the land guided where people chose to build their homes. Let that settle like dust on a quiet floor. Fact 94. The world's rivers are home to an incredible diversity of fish. From the giant catfish of the Mekong to the electric eels of the Amazon, from the salmon that make epic migrations up the rivers of the Pacific Northwest to the tiny blind fish that live in subterranean rivers. Each river system and each part of a river has its own unique community of fish adapted to the specific conditions of flow, temperature, and food sources. This biodiversity is a precious part of our planet's natural heritage, a hidden world of life that flows with the water. Beneath the surface, 1,000 different forms of life swim in the quiet currents. Return to the easy rhythm of your breath. Fact 95. A river is more than just water flowing in a channel. It is a complete system that connects the land, the air, and the sea. It sculpts the landscape, transports materials, and supports a vast web of life. It has a source, a path, and a destination. It has a history that can be read in its terraces and a future that is constantly unfolding. To follow a river from its beginning to its end is to witness a fundamental process of the earth, a story of gravity, time, and the relentless, gentle power of water. As you rest, feel the simple, steady flow of that story. Let the thoughts soften at the edges and fade. Outro. And so, our journey with the river comes to a gentle close. We have drifted from the quiet mountain springs, down through rushing gorges, across wide and winding floodplains, and finally out into the calm expanse of the sea. The water that began as a single drop has completed its long return. There is nothing more to do now. The river continues to flow, and the great water cycle turns without any effort. You can let go of the journey and simply rest in the quiet space that remains. Feel the steady rhythm of your own breath, like a slow and gentle current. You are safe, you're comfortable, and you can allow yourself to drift completely. Sleep well.